Hey, Tamie M here of TamieMCoaching.com, empowerment life coach and creator of the Freedom Class. And what I want to talk to you about today is covert narcissist personality disorder. Now, before I begin this video, I just want to quickly announce that a couple of spots are available for the free one-to-one consult with either myself or a member of my team for the Freedom Class program. So if that's of interest to you, be sure to stick around till the end of the video for the announcement on how to enroll and sign up for the consult. And with that, let's get started. So let's talk about covert narcissist personality disorder. First, it's important to remember that narcissist personality can occur in varying degrees of severity on a continuum or a spectrum. In other words, there's a sliding scale to these issues. So an individual with narcissist personality will present differently depending on the individual. So there are certain telltale signs that will really clue you in, especially if you know what you're looking for, quickly to help you determine if you're dealing with someone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism. But just know up front, these are never black or white issues, which of course can make it a little tricky to spot, in particular in the beginning, when you're first getting to know someone and they're putting their best foot forward, they're on their best behavior, you're being presented with the mask, the false persona, and all the emotional manipulation and perception manipulation that goes on in the early stages with these folks, right? But again, when you know what you're looking for, it can make it a lot easier. But don't be hard on yourself if you missed the signs early on, or if it took you some time to start scratching your head and wondering why things weren't adding up. The truth is, even the most highly trained mental health professionals will admit to missing the early warning signs, whether we're talking about overt or covert narcissism. It's not always easy to spot, but my intent with this video is to help you determine what it is that you're dealing with. Because the truth is, although narcissism is hard to spot, covert narcissism is even harder. Why? Because these people present quite differently than your typical, your average grandiose narcissist, your classic narcissist. And that's what we're going to be diving into in great detail here today. So covert narcissism, also known as the shy, closet, hungry, or vulnerable narcissist. These are all terms that apply to this subtype of narcissist personality disorder. The interesting thing about these people is that they present very differently, as I said, than your classic narcissist, right? They don't show up with your typical outward sense of entitlement, superiority, grandiosity. Rather, they present as being very shy, timid, insecure, self-effacing even, and highly anxious, in particular about how others see them, what others think about them, right? So they carry a lot of high anxiety. They twist a lot emotionally, internally. When I think of those that I have known personally in my life, they truly are tortured souls. Once you get to know them, they come off as being very meek and timid and shy and reserved and self-effacing and insecure. And inside of all of that is a really, really tortured soul. So I have compassion for these people, but I have learned the hard way many times over to have compassion from a distance, because make no mistake, as much as they may appear to be timid and shy and incredibly fragile, the truth is they're about as fragile as a Mack truck. They are absolutely, without question, just as lacking in empathy, lacking in conscience, carrying an irrational sense of entitlement, although their delusions of grandeur and grandiosity may be more internalized than externalized like your classic narcissist, make no mistake, those delusions of grandiosity are still there. Fundamentally, what it boils down to when we're dealing with someone who fits the criteria or the profile of a covert narcissist, a hungry or a vulnerable narcissist, is you're dealing with a severely wounded inner child, like next level stuff. You're really dealing with a childish, an entitled, childish, ingrate. Like those are the three words that I would use to describe most accurately the covert narcissists that I've had to tango with in my life. And there have been a number of them. And, you know, the drag about dealing with these individuals, especially when you're coming from a place of, you know, having a high empathy nature and a desire to, you know, serve and help and really, you know, go to bat for people, is it's easy to mistake them as, you know, an untreated codependent who might have some narcissistic traits, but they really are just this wounded person. And when you're coming from a place of high empathy and are lacking in healthy boundaries yourself, it can be very easy to get sucked in by this type of individual and fully exploited by them. And why is that? Well, because they live from a victim stance perpetually. In fact, that might be one of your first clues. If you know anyone in your life who, no matter what, always has a victim story, no matter what resources have been presented to them, no matter what help, support, guidance, support, assistance, programs, you name it, no matter what has been opened up to them, they live from a perpetual place of victimization, forever telling you their victim story, whether that be from way back when or just last week or what's going on today. They are forever the victim. And when we are dealing with an individual like that who is operating fundamentally from that perspective. And don't get me wrong here. Those of us who have been narcissistically abused, you've heard me say it before if you've tuned into me at all, we have fully been victimized. Those of us who have been on the receiving end of narcissistic abuse have fully been victimized. But there's a big difference between living from a perpetual place of victimization and, oh, woe is me is my mantra, even to the circumstances that I create myself. I create and perpetuate and participate in situations and circumstances myself that cause this sense of, this perception of high victimization. There's a big difference between that and acknowledging that, yes, unfortunately, I've been on the receiving end of narcissistic abuse and therefore have been victimized, but that doesn't mean that I have to live my life as a victim. So there's a great big huge difference between the two, right? So let's not get confused there. But when you have someone in your life who, in spite of all opportunity, all resources, all help, support, assistance, guidance, you name it, offered up to them on a silver platter over and over and over again, and nonetheless, they remain in that victim stance, oh, woe is me is their mantra, chances are really good you're dealing with someone who lands on the spectrum of covert narcissist personality, potentially even personality disorder, depending on how high spectrum the individual is, right? So a perpetual sense of I'm a victim, coming off as being very timid, reserved, insecure, high anxiety, self-effacing, putting myself down, are some real red flags and clues. Listen, we've all had our bad days, and we've all, found ourselves in a fetal position, sucking our thumb from time to time, given what it is that we've had to deal with in our life. But again, there's a big difference between a particular experience, or maybe even an ongoing experience with family of origin or a marriage that you are learning and working your way out of, learning, seeking solutions, doing the work to extricate fully and make the changes. There's a big difference between that and someone who loves to stay stuck in that place because they are so identified with the "oh, woe is me. Oh, woe is me. Oh, woe is me," again, is the mantra, right? So there's a big difference. These people are just as dangerous and just as destructive as your classic, more overt narcissist. They are just as lacking in empathy, just as lacking in conscience. They carry equal amounts of irrational entitlement. They are off the charts emotionally immature. And they don't call them energy vampires for nothing. These are the folks who will suck the air out of any room. These are the folks who will drain your vital life force from you. They may show up and appear to be very helpful, very kind, very giving initially, or at various stages of the relationship with them. But you'll notice that it really is always motivated by how they will be seen, how they will be perceived, and not so much from the kindness and goodness of their own heart. Like, it's far more to do with perception manipulation, winning external validation, winning external approval, and being seen a certain way in a certain light, the false persona, than it is about, I really just want to do this for you because I'm a kind, loving, decent, genuine human being, and it gives me great pleasure to do something kind for someone else. Like, two very different things, right? So they will exploit you. They will emotionally manipulate you. They will do so rather than their more overt cousins who land on the spectrum of destructive narcissism in more, aggressive and direct ways. They will do it more passive aggressively. These are the folks who will manipulate and attempt to control you through the silent treatment, through pouting and sulking and sighing, and becoming very bitter and very resentful the moment they realize that you're actually onto them. And you're seeing through the fake, phony, bullshit persona and facade. And you've had enough of the never-ending victim stance and victim story with little to nothing being done to actually affect change. So just know that the person you're dealing with, if you're dealing with a covert narcissist, is truly a wolf in sheep's clothing. Like, that is an incredibly accurate way to describe what it is that you're dealing with. Do not be fooled by the timid, meek, insecure, anxiety-riddled, "oh, woe is me, I'm such a victim forever and ever," phony, fake, false persona that they are projecting to you and others. Do not be fooled by that. Understand that these people are equally as dangerous, equally as toxic, equally as destructive as a more covert, grandiose narcissist. Just because they're more passive in their aggressive, just because they're more subtle and covert in their manipulation, doesn't mean it's not aggressive or manipulation, right? So just know in advance, don't kid yourself. Don't be fooled by the fake mask and the fake persona. As I said it earlier in the video, these people are about as fragile as a Mack truck. And you'll find out just how not fragile they really are when it's time to set a boundary with them, or say no, or for whatever reason, they're not getting their own way. You're not being fooled. You're not so easy to manipulate. Maybe you're onto them a little bit, or you're not willing to participate in the never-ending victim story that they perpetuate, right? You'll find out just how not fragile and not so meek these people are, because underneath that fake, phony facade is a whole world of rage. And the moment you say no and set a boundary and set another boundary, and they realize they're not getting their own way and they can't manipulate you, you're going to find out very quickly, again, what these people are really all about. And just like a more overt narcissist, they are willing to do and say whatever it takes to get their way, to win the right fight, to be seen and perceived in whatever fashion that they're wanting to be seen and perceived. They won't necessarily do it to your face, though. These are the folks who will absolutely run years-long smear campaigns against you. Overt narcissists will do this as well, but the covert narcissist is highly sneaky, like highly, highly sneaky, and very cowardly, very, very cowardly, far more so than their more overt cousins on the spectrum. So in my experience, right? So, they'll smile to your face, and, they'll play the game, and they'll do the little dance and performance in front of you. Meanwhile, behind your back, to anyone who will listen, you are being shred to pieces. They are fully projecting everything that they do not like about themselves, cannot stand about themselves, cannot acknowledge or own about themselves onto you, to anyone who will listen. So again, these people are equally as toxic, equally as dangerous, equally as destructive. They're just a little trickier to spot because of how they present. So what do we do when we realize that the individual that we're dealing with is actually a covert narcissist, a whole lot more emotionally, mentally, and spiritually ill than we originally thought? Well, just like with any other narcissist, the important thing is to first and foremost fully accept the truth of who and what it is that you're dealing with. Like, just surrender and accept to the reality. As much as you may wish it were different, vital that you surrender to the reality of who and what it is that you're dealing with, because from that place you can start making choices and decisions in favor of taking care of yourself, right? In doing so, we let go of the illusion of control and the magical fantasy thinking that we might be able to affect change in an individual. These folks do not change. They don't change. If they were going to change, they would have changed a long time ago. In fact, what's going on with them gets worse, not better, over time. So the longer you hang in there, the more you're going to be manipulated, the more you're going to be exploited, and the more you're going to be smeared and, have your character, at least, if not your bank account and your whole life, fully assassinated, because that's what these people are all about. That's what their modus operandi is. So acceptance, so you can relinquish any illusions of control or hope of change in the individual, and then really making whatever decisions and choices that you need to in favor of taking care of you. If you're able to go no contact, that's always the best way. In many situations, we don't owe people an explanation. They're entitled to be who they are. We're not under any illusion that we're going to affect change there. If we're coming from a reasonably, relatively healthy place, they get to be who they are, and we get to do what we need to do to take care of ourselves. So if you can go fully no contact, that's absolutely your best bet. Absolutely your best bet. If you're in a situation where you can't go full-blown no contact, then low contact is really what you want to do. As little contact as possible if you have no choice. For example, if we're talking about, someone that you share children with, or, is in the work environment, low contact if you can't go no contact, and go gray rock on these people. Which, basically boils down to giving them no energetic emotional supply. No reaction, become very boring, very uninteresting, very flatline. And soon enough, they'll realize that this isn't any fun and they'll have to go somewhere else to get their hit or their fix or their source of supply, right? So that really is your best bet. The moment that you realize that this is what you're dealing with, don't be fooled. Don't allow yourself to be manipulated. Don't fall for the victim story and let that be the excuse that has you enabling them in their appalling behavior and attitudes, in their, delusional sense of entitlement and infantile way of showing up in the world, right? Like, we do not want to be the people who are enabling people to perpetuate all of this really unhealthy and often very dangerous and destructive way of being in the world, right? So don't allow yourself to be manipulated. Remove yourself from the situation to the best of your ability entirely, if at all possible. Cut ties, and then, go inside and do your own work. And I find that, when someone like that shows up in my life, and all these years later, I mean, it still happens, right? It still happens where we get duped initially and we think we're meeting the most wonderful, lovely, charming, sweet individual. And then we travel a little bit down the path and we realize, oh, wow, okay, they've got some issues, but hey, don't we all, right? And we're highly empathic people, and we want to be, again, there for folks and, do the right thing. But as you continue down the path with this individual, you soon find that, they're sucking the vital life force energy from your very being and playing all kinds of bullshit, nonsensical games that are really quite destructive and damaging and make it fully impossible to have any sort of healthy relationship with them. So just extricating yourself from the situation to the best of your ability is, the best thing that you can do for yourself. And then go inside and do some work. Let's use this as an experience to up-level our understanding. What's going on inside of me that I'm attracted to this in a friend or a romantic partner, or that I've attracted this into my life? Again, right? So, what's going on inside of me that this is what is showing up in my reality? And that's not to, blame the victim of narcissistic abuse, but just to say that we can make amazing, amazing forward progress in our healing and recovery when we're willing to approach these situations, preferably from a distance, once we've removed ourselves, or we've gone at least, low contact, if not full blown no contact, to approach these situations like, the lab tech and, the lab technician in a laboratory. Isn't this fascinating? I fell for it again with another individual. Okay, what are the patterns? Who does this person represent? What unresolved issue might I be carrying in my subconscious that I was willing to do that dance for even more than 5 minutes with that individual? What is it that's going on inside of me that is a match? And it may just be that you're a full-blown empath who has yet to learn healthy boundaries. It could be that simple, right? But when we look at these experiences from that perspective, we get to grow and evolve and become stronger, wiser, smarter, more productive and healthier in our own lives. And then we get to walk out into the world and have impact, whether that's in our little corner of the world or, a greater stage, right? We get to have impact in a positive way, carrying deeper understanding, having done the inner work and having been self-reflective. So these people can really be our greatest teachers if we're willing to approach the experiences from that place, from that perspective. So again, no contact if you can do it. Low contact / gray rock if you have no alternative. And then, do the work to connect the dots and pull as much gold out of the experience as you possibly can in service to yourself and others moving forward. And with that, I'm going to call it a wrap. Thank you so much for watching. I sincerely hope this was helpful. If you're new to the channel, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell to be notified when I post new videos throughout the week. Share it with your friends if you think it would be helpful. And as I mentioned at the top of the video, we have a few spots available in the calendar this week for the free one-to-one consult with either myself or a member of my team for the Freedom Class program. So if that's of interest to you, be sure to click the link in the description below to apply to see if you qualify for a free one-on-one consultation with us. And as always, I will leave you with this. Know your value. Know your value and unlock your freedom. Much love. Bye for now.